She was very strong, a big fighter, but she was just all on emotion. So just run on pure fire, which was her biggest strength, but also her biggest weakness, right? Because that would either hinder, it would either hold her back and destroy her in the middle of a stressful moment, or it would help her overcome something. And she had no control over that. It was just inside of her. And the other part was a bit of her environment, just like the coaching environment, the people that she was around before that. So it was literally just a long, long process of helping her, physically become more, aware. The one thing that was also missing was there were some technical things that she needed to work on.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
wasn't really ready to address those. That was one of those things where it was like we don't talk about this kind of thing. So I was like, all right, so started working around the whole other thing, helping the environment, try to bring them, the right people in the environment, for her, working on the physical side of things, slowly helping her, with how she, realizes how she's thinking, how she's processing stuff, how she's sort of processing emotions internally, but then how is she expressing those emotions, and when and how does she, I guess, use that fire for her strength, have more control over it rather than letting it control her.
Yeah, well, let's stay on there a little bit. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. So, like you said, the physicality, the emotional side of things, and the environment. So, the emotional side of things, obviously, like we deal with emotions on an everyday basis, but let's talk about tennis in particular, like inside of the actual match, because it can emotions can be super high after one point and super low after the next point, and super high from game to game and from set to set and everything like that. Um, and as you mentioned, it can be your biggest asset to if channeled in the right way, but it can also be your biggest detriment if not channeled in the right way. So like, what tools or things does she do, or have y'all talked about doing in the middle of the match when, like, traditionally in the past maybe frustration would overcome her and lead to poor performance? How have you taken that frustration and channeled it in a different way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's two parts. Obviously, there's when you're in the moment. That's the most difficult, right? That's the most difficult for anyone. When you're in that fight mode and you're in that, just tunnel vision, combat vision, whatever you want to call it, depending on the environment, it's very difficult to pull yourself out, right? To find that place again. There are some things that you can do, but there was two parts to that. One is over time helping her become more and more aware earlier and earlier of like before she gets into that spot where she's out of control, how to recognize it on the way there and trying to
Mm.
make sure she can recognize it as soon as possible. So then she can start to act upon it earlier, right? So before it gets to that part, because for some people, when you're there, it's like, okay, you're there. We're just gonna like race through this until it burns out and see what happens at the end, right? So again, no real control over it. So I think that's the first part is that build that awareness of yourself first, and the second is the awareness of the environment of what's, what things are happening, what patterns are you seeing that typically lead you down the wrong way. So often for her, it was her attention would be in too many places. And when she would narrow that focus, so the attention kind of narrowing that attention down to be more focused, it was making sure she was focused on the right targets because the wrong targets could be focused on, and that's when you're going to go sort of, down that wrong path.
What do you mean by that? Focusing on the right targets? Like, what are those right targets? Like, is it specific things in her game? Is it not really looking at the crowd, or is it like just looking at you, like one of her coaches? Like, what are those right targets?
It could be a number of things based on that moment. Some of that nowadays it's more like, what she feels what she needs to do. So some of it is yes, what I would prefer, and which I can get to now, the point of when she's in the moment, when she's in there, what do you do? And focusing on something that's physical, right? Something that you can control no matter how you're feeling, right? Because when you're in the mess, you know what I mean? For like a nice way of putting it,
Yeah.
it, you have a lot of things, especially with someone who's very emotionally, sort of driven. It's very difficult to just think your way out of those things, right? To mantra your way out of it, to visualize, all these different things, right?
Yeah.
That everyone likes
Yeah.
to talk about. Well, the reality is it don't work, right? The reality is like what you need to do is find a sense of something you have control over. So it might be like there's two things technically that she was, some tactic that she was supposed to focus on is like bringing her back to like that task. Go back to this. So like, this is plan A, and if that you start to feel your rhythm is off and you're not hitting those shots and you're just off. Okay, this is your backup. This go to this. There's a couple shots that is like her shots where if she's just not feeling that rhythm, that timing, then she'll go back to this particular shot until she finds that rhythm again, right? And that's like her
Mm.
go-to where she's just like, doesn't matter how she's feeling, she can pretty much 9 times out of 10 she's gonna hit it. So that kind of gives her that like kind of reset, right? And then she'll
Yeah.
build back upon that. It could be, yeah, focusing on one of us. It's usually Anton, the tennis coach, because that's what we, all agreed on is like it needs to be one voice, one person, one, face, even though we're all right there. Um, Again, just so there's not too much, attention going anywhere. It's
Totally.
just can be very quick, very clear, very to the point. But I prefer to use physical things because my point, as I said already, is that if it's a physical thing you do with your body, like how you're moving, how you're standing, or more importantly, I'd say how you're breathing, that is in your control, regardless of how you're feeling, right?
Mm.
And what it takes, though, is just a little bit of discipline, just long enough to create a habit, right? Just enough discipline to do it, no matter how you're feeling. Because if it's a little bit late, it feels really annoying and stupid to do it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're just like you kind of get that hangry, like I don't care. You're just gonna, you just want to prove yourself right that you're mad and the world's after you, or whatever, right? So you're just gonna go whatever.
Yeah.
So it just takes a bit of discipline, recognition, that awareness, like I said, and a bit of discipline to do the thing, no matter how you're feeling. And so we picked a lot of breathing techniques, right? It was things to focus on, which again, the physical thing, usually like a technical, excuse me, a tactical, physical thing that she could be doing. Like this is my shot, just focus on that till you feel it again. And the other is the breathing.
What are these breathing techniques in the middle of the match? And if so, what do those look like?
All the above. It could be before, during, and after. It could be at key moments. It could be the it was really subtle initially. It wasn't really something that, for a while she didn't realize that she was doing it. It was just more, okay, every time you, have a moment of a pause, like at changeovers. So when sees the tennis players are sitting down, is her focus was to just slow down her breathing. So take a nice deep breath in, hold it for a few seconds, exhale as slow as you can, right? And then what you would do when, do that a few times, and it just kind of helps, it lowers your heart rate, right? But what it does also, I'll tell you the thing. Yes, how you breathe, like breath control is emotional control, right? That's 100%.